This is a new podcast from Alpha Business Media. Welcome to The Deep Dive. We're the place where we take complex info, boil it down, and help you get really informed really fast. Today, wow, we're heading deep into the Himalayas. We're asking a huge question. Could Nepal actually become a global model for a happiness-based economy? We'll be looking at lessons from Bhutan's famous Gross National Happiness, or GNH. And you've given us some fantastic sources to dig into this. Really, the core question here is there a better way to measure how a country's doing than just GDP? Could Nepal show us a more, maybe, human-centered path, one that puts well-being first?
It's such a critical question right now, isn't it, with all the crises the world is facing and what the sources suggest about redefining success? Well, it's pretty surprising.
Okay, let's unpack that. So GDP, gross domestic product, it's been the standard, the king, really, for decades. But people haven't always been happy with it, right? I remember reading about Robert F. Kennedy way back in '68. He had this famous critique of GDP's predecessor, saying it measures everything except what makes life worth living.
Exactly. He pointed out it counts things like, air pollution cleanup costs, building more prisons, but it totally misses, as he put it, the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the smiles on their faces, things that actually matter.
That feeling that GDP is missing something huge, it's clearly grown over the years. It's a global debate now.
It really is. And the most, structured and maybe boldest answer came from Bhutan, Gross National Happiness, GNH. It wasn't just a slogan. The fourth came, Jigme Singye Wangchuk announced it in 1972. He literally said, gross national happiness is more important than gross national product.
Wow, that's a statement.
And it wasn't pulled out of thin air either. The idea, believe it or not, traces back to Bhutan's 1729 legal code, which basically said if a government can't make its people happy, it doesn't really have a right to exist.
Centuries old. That gives it real weight. So GNH isn't just about feeling good. How does it define progress differently?
Right, it's much deeper than just a mood. It argues that real progress needs a balance between material development and spiritual development. It's heavily influenced by Buddhist values, harmony, compassion, that sense of interconnectedness. It's a fundamental rethinking of development.
Not throwing out economics, but reframing it.
Precisely. Progress is seen as something achieved slowly, carefully, through 5-year plans, always trying to preserve traditional values alongside development.
And I understand it's built on 4 main pillars.
Yes, 4 integrated pillars guide everything. First, sustainable and equitable socioeconomic development. So growth, yes, but fair growth, benefiting everyone, and crucially, without harming society or the environment.
Okay, sustainability and fairness baked in. What's next?
Second, preservation and promotion of culture. Culture isn't just history. It's seen as a living force for identity and meaning, something that needs active protection, especially from, globalization's pressures.
Makes sense. Pillar 3.
Third is environmental protection. This is huge in Bhutan. They see a direct link between human happiness and the planet's health. Think policies like banning chemical fertilizers, keeping massive forest cover. The environment is seen as healing, aesthetically and spiritually.
And the final one.
Number 4 is good governance. Effective, transparent, accountable government is the foundation. Every policy decision is actually assessed for its impact on well-being. They even set up a Ministry of Happiness.
The whole Ministry of Happiness. That shows commitment. So 4 pillars: economics, culture, environment, governance. How do they actually measure progress against these?
It gets quite practical. They break it down into 9 areas or domains. Things like psychological well-being, health, education, how people use their time, cultural diversity, community vitality, ecological health, living standards, and good governance itself.
9 broad areas. And how do they track those?
Through the GNH Index. It uses 33 specific indicators. And they conduct these really detailed nationwide surveys, asking questions like, can you concentrate? Do you lose sleep because of worry? Things that get at real-life experience.
So they're getting granular data on well-being.
Exactly. The surveys pinpoint hotspots of unhappiness or deprivation. Then the government can target resources, maybe improve health services here, support culture there. It's very data-driven well-being policy.
Okay, so if you put GDP and GNH side by side, the difference is stark.
Absolutely. GDP's goal is economic production, pure and simple. It sees the economy mostly as monetary transactions. Social factors, ignored. Environment, depletion can even look like income. Culture, not on the radar. Governance, indirect at best.
Whereas GNH flips it. Main goal: social well-being, economic view, sustainable development, social factors, explicitly measured. Environment, conservation is key. Culture, actively promoted. Governance, a fundamental pillar.
It's a completely different worldview, really.
It sounds incredibly appealing, almost utopian in a way.
Yeah.
But we need to look critically, right? Especially in Bhutan's own experience.
We absolutely do. While GNH is a compelling philosophy, it's also been, let's be frank, a very effective soft power tool for Bhutan. For a small country squeezed between India and China, GNH brought international attention, respect, and strengthened its sovereignty in a way military or economic might never could.
Ah, so there's a geopolitical angle too. But the sources you provided point to something darker, some serious contradictions behind the happy image. What's that about?
Yes, this is crucial and frankly disturbing. The emphasis within GNH policies on traditional Bhutanese culture was used in the 1990s. It became an ideological justification for some truly repressive, racist policies targeting the ethnic Nepalese minority, the Lhotshampa.
Also,
Over 100,000 Lhotshampas were forcibly expelled, stripped of citizenship, becoming refugees. For them, GNH wasn't gross national happiness, it was, as some called it, gross national sorrow.
that's a shocking misuse of the concept.
It highlights a real danger, doesn't it? When the state gets to define what culture and happiness mean, it can become a tool to exclude or suppress minorities. It's also worth noting that even inside Bhutan, many understand GNH less as being happy all the time and more about creating conditions for harmony with self, society, nature. That nuance often gets lost internationally.
And Bhutan's context is unique, isn't it? Buddhist philosophy, a monarchy allowing top-down implementation.
Exactly. Its success, such as it is tied to that specific context, which brings us back to Nepal.
Right, so for Nepal, the lesson isn't copy Bhutan.
Not at all. The key takeaway has to be separating the universal principles of GNH, the value of fair development, environmental care, good governance from Bhutan's specific and sometimes deeply flawed cultural realization of it.
Nepal needs to adapt, not adopt wholesale. It needs a model that fits its own reality, democratic, incredibly diverse, multicultural, and complex.
Precisely. And Nepal's reality is, well, it's a land of incredible contrast, the stunning beauty of the Himalayas alongside crushing poverty. It's this very complexity that makes it such a fascinating potential test case.
Let's look at that reality. Economically, it's classed as a least developed country, GDP around US $41 billion. What drives the economy?
Primarily three things: agriculture, employing maybe three-quarters of the people, but often inefficiently. Remittances, money sent home by Nepalese working abroad, which is huge but makes the economy vulnerable. And tourism, of course.
But there's potential.
Huge potential. The World Bank is projecting growth around 4.5% for fiscal 2025. Hydropower is a major opportunity, plus boosting domestic trade and agriculture.
So given that potential, what's Nepal's current development strategy? Is it just focused on GDP growth?
This is where it gets really interesting. Nepal's official 16th National Plan, 2024-2029, already sounds a lot like GNH in spirit. Its stated goals are good governance, social justice, and prosperity. It sets targets for poverty reduction, boosting the Human Development Index, increasing life expectancy.
So the official plan already echoes GNH principles.
In many ways, yes, you could argue it's basically a general outline of the GNH plan. What's missing is perhaps the formalized GNH structure, the specific index, the measurement tools. So shifting towards GNH wouldn't be a radical leap. It feels more like a logical evolution, giving structure to existing ambitions.
But ambition meets reality. Nepal's social fabric. It has some deep challenges, doesn't it? The sources mention the caste system.
Yes, despite being formally abolished back in 1963, the legacy of the caste system is still deeply entrenched. Dalits, around 13% of the population, face systemic discrimination. In 2022, something like 42% of Dalits lived below the poverty line. That's staggering.
And gender inequality.
Also a major issue. Women often have limited roles in political and economic life, and violence against women remains a serious problem.
And given Nepal's history, particularly the Civil War, which was fueled by feelings of exclusion,
Social inclusion isn't just a nice-to-have, it's absolutely fundamental for stability. Any Nepali GNH model has to have social justice right at its core. It's non-negotiable.
then there's the environment. Nepal is on the front line of climate change.
Tragically, yes. The Himalayas are warming about twice as fast as the global average. Glaciers are melting at an alarming rate. This isn't just an environmental issue. It threatens the water supply for literally billions downstream and drastically increases flood risks. Projections suggest up to 2/3 of the Himalayan ice could be gone by 2100.
2/3. That's unthinkable. And there are local problems, too.
Definitely. Deforestation, soil erosion, landslides are ongoing issues. And tourism, while economically vital, brings its own problems like the serious garbage problems on mountains like Everest. Remember those pictures of 11 tons of trash being removed?
Horrifying. Are things being done?
Yes, there are existing cleanup drives, ecosystem restoration projects like the Terre Arc Landscapes program, but they're often piecemeal. G&H offers a framework, a system to integrate all these efforts into a coherent national strategy for environmental protection and resilience.
Okay, so social fragility, environmental vulnerability, and then there's the geopolitical pressure cooker.
Absolutely. Nepal is physically sandwiched between India and China, two huge competing powers. Plus, you have growing U.S. interest and influence in the region.
And development aid or projects can become part of that power play.
For sure. Big initiatives, whether it's China's Belt and Road or the U.S.'s Millennium Challenge account, aren't just about development. They're instruments of soft power, pulling Nepal into different orbits. Nepal has to navigate this incredibly carefully to avoid becoming just a pawn in their game.
So in that context, adopting a G&H-based model, it could be more than just a development strategy.
Exactly. It could be a strategic imperative, as one source puts it, a way for Nepal to forge its own independent identity, to assert its sovereignty not through power politics, but through values. It allows Nepal to build its foreign policy around principles like harmony, sustainability, social justice, rather than just reacting to external pressures. It's potentially a powerful statement of national purpose.
Right. Okay, so we've seen the challenges, the potential, the strategic angle. How does Nepal actually do this? How do you turn G&H principles into a practical plan? You said it's about integrating existing efforts.
Yes, integration is key, not necessarily inventing everything from scratch. The first, foundational step has to be good governance and social justice. This means moving beyond just having laws on the books. Like the Caste Discrimination Act of 2011, it needs strict, unwavering enforcement.
Wow.
By empowering the national commissions for human rights, for Dalits, for women, giving them resources, ensuring impartial prosecution of discrimination and hate crimes, and running nationwide awareness campaigns to really shift attitudes.
And measuring inclusion.
Critically important. Nepal needs to develop its own G&H index, building on Bhutan's experience but tailored to Nepal. And this index must give significant weight to social inclusion indicators. Think about tracking the percentage of Dalits or women in local government positions, tracking women's land ownership, access to justice for marginalized groups. Create a social inclusion map to make progress visible and hold authorities accountable. This fits perfectly with the spirit of Nepal's 2015 constitution.
Okay, foundation laid. Then tackling the economy, rethinking prosperity, sustainable livelihoods, what does that look like?
One big area is tourism. Shifting towards G&H tourism, focusing on high-value, low-impact niches. Think spiritual retreats, wellness tourism, agro-tourism, where visitors experience farm life, cultural immersion, maybe educational eco-tours.
And keeping the benefits local.
Absolutely vital. Empowering local communities to run guest houses, handicraft cooperatives, making sure tourism revenue stays in the community rather than leaking out, and actively managing popular spots to avoid overcrowding and pollution.
What else on the economic front?
Agriculture. Launching a major national mission on organic farming. Inspired by Bhutan, Nepal could aim to become a world leader in organic produce. This means supporting existing organic farmers, creating a robust national certification system, promoting premium export brands like Himalayan organic tea, and linking farms directly to the tourism sector through farm-to-table experiences.
And hydropower. It's got potential, but risks too.
Yes, responsible development is key. Ensuring all hydropower projects meet the absolute highest international environmental and social standards. That means transparent impact assessments before projects start and clear mechanisms for sharing the benefits fairly with affected local communities. No cutting corners.
Makes sense. Next, leveraging Nepal's unique assets, using soft power, culture, and community.
Right. Nepal has incredible cultural wealth, including UNESCO World Heritage sites like Lumbini, the birthplace of Buddha, and the Kathmandu Valley. These shouldn't just be seen as tourist sites. They should be integrated into the national G&H strategy as platforms for global dialogue on peace, spirituality, sustainable living. This enhances Nepal's soft power on the world stage.
And strengthening communities from the ground up.
Essential. Supporting and scaling up the work of effective NGOs already active in Nepal, groups like Volunteers Initiative, Nepal working on women's empowerment, youth skills, local health, environmental projects. Bolstering these grassroots efforts directly builds what G&H calls community vitality or resilience.
Finally, the environment. The Himalayas building resilience, an environmental charter.
This requires urgent, coordinated action. Establishing a high-level, interagency task force on climate change adaptation is a must. Get the ministries for environment, agriculture, tourism, water resources all working together on a single, comprehensive national plan to deal with glacier melt, changing monsoon patterns, and water security.
And tackling that waste problem.
A national waste management strategy is crucial. Focus hard on reducing waste at the source, especially plastics, in the tourism industry. Invest in modern recycling and waste processing facilities. And really embrace circular economy principles, designing systems where waste becomes a resource. Learning the hard lessons from Everest is key here.
So looking at all these practical steps, it really does seem like the core idea is integration, using the G&H framework as an umbrella.
Exactly. It connects the dots between all the good things already happening or planned. It gives them coherence, purpose, and crucially, a way to measure real progress. And that brings us back to the most important practical step. Developing Nepal's own tailored G&H index. That's the tool that turns well-meaning goals into accountable policy. It lets everyone see if growth is actually improving lives, healing the environment, and building a fairer society.
It's a powerful vision. So the main takeaway from this deep dive seems clear. Nepal shouldn't just cut and paste Bhutan's G&H model. That wouldn't fit. But the principles behind G&H, equitable, sustainable development, living in harmony with nature, valuing culture, demanding good governance, these resonate deeply with Nepal's own goals, especially those already in its 16th national plan.
Absolutely. G&H provides a system, a philosophy, to strengthen those existing goals. And if Nepal adapts it successfully, it could actually turn its biggest challenges into strengths. Imagine social inequality transformed into a commitment to social justice as a national foundation. Environmental vulnerability turned into global leadership in protecting the Himalayas. Geopolitical pressure met with a unique soft power based on peace and harmony.
It's a compelling alternative narrative. Of course, the path won't be easy. As you said, it's an uphill climb, requiring huge political will and, crucially, getting the public involved and supportive. But if Nepal can pull it off, it wouldn't just be good for Nepal. It could offer the world a desperately needed model, a democratic, scalable way to build a future that's truly sustainable, fair, and genuinely prosperous. It would be proof that happiness, that holistic well-being, isn't just some fuzzy ideal. It could be a conscious path an entire nation chooses. Something for you, our listener, to think about. What part of Nepal's potential journey stands out most to you?